I haven't wished you happy birthday on a podcast episode.
We haven't done one for a while.
I haven't. And as is always the case in digital, this week has been a week in digital. In the UK in particular, something called AI mode has been rolled out to the UK. So was it just been piloted or rolled out initially in the US or elsewhere? I can't remember.
Yeah. US first.
And now it's in the UK. So I want to explore that a little bit more with the backdrop of what is search, and also this notion that is out there at the moment, which is all this stuff is new, brand new. And actually, are we treating it, or are we looking at it as brand new, or is it just slightly new positioning of something, or, has ultimately the same principles that modern search is requiring now with things like AI mode, actually have they been in place for a long, long time? So we'll get into that a little bit more. But to start with, I have a question. So I know that you've mentioned on podcast episodes, LinkedIn, all sorts of different places, you've said that what's now been pushed as this new SEO thinking, so I mentioned it there, things like AI mode, but also just ultimately what is search now, in particular organic search and brand building. So you've often said that this new SEO thinking is stuff that we've been doing for years and years and years. We mastered it years ago. What, in your mind, when you say that, what do you mean by that for people who might be taken aback by that comment?
Well, I think the principles of strong SEO haven't changed.
Ever?
Not ever. I mean, there are times 10 years plus ago where it was easier to manipulate results. That became gradually harder. It forced more emphasis on best practice. Those best practices have not really gone away. And it happens now where we're in the AI generative engine world, and those engines and LLMs are getting data from search and from the internet, ultimately, which is structured in a certain way. They retrieve the information differently to how Google does, but the principles are the same, loosely. So good SEO, structured data, technically strong, detailed content, expert content, good user experience, user focus. All these things are things that Google have given us clues about for a long time. And I think good SEO agencies, good SEOs, good brands have done the right thing and played a longer game and will now see that presence start to shift into your generative engines.
I read you said something there about, obviously this is sort of legacy and actually has been going on for a while in terms of the core principles for which performing at the right level and growing organically, not least, have been in place for a long, long time. But I read an interesting thing this morning that someone in our world said that many, many brands, in his opinion, are vastly underprepared for this. Now, that's quite interesting because it's almost the opposite of us saying we've been doing this for however many years. Do you also share that view that brands out there are a lot of brands out there that are probably undervaluing and underestimating where we are now and what is
100%.
required?
Yeah, I think that the opinion, we've talked about this in the past, the opinion of SEO as a marketing practice and a channel has been pulled through the mud
Yeah.
a lot. due to what I said there about longer time period ago, it was easier to manipulate results. Fast forward a little bit, good SEO practice became the differentiator, if you like, between good agency, bad agency. Those brands that believed in that practice then will benefit now, or are in front now. But what's happened is, if you think about the construct of AI, Gen AI results, all that kind of stuff, who would you want, or who would you think is best placed to make sure your brand is present and growing and taking advantage? First place you would, or I would go to, would be an SEO agency. That's why there's a lot of chat about SEO being in a prime position, but also searches for SEO agencies increasing.
I've noticed.
Interest in search is increasing. It's perfectly positioned. It feels like the second wave of SEO for me. I know there's a lot of panic, like AI is going to replace jobs, AI is going to do this, going to do that, but ultimately brands are still going to need to capture attention, and SEOs are perfectly positioned to give genuinely valuable strategy advice on how to capitalize on that.
Do you think with that then, interesting picking up on you said that there's been a little bit of chatter as well this week, I've noticed, around the interest spike in searches for, say, SEO agency. I noticed there were a couple of, rightly so, a couple of comments back and forth on LinkedIn this week about a few screenshots that people had shared that was like SEO versus PPC, basically, in terms of trend, Google trend sort of data. And the debate on that was, well, I won't even go into that because that's very specific to the post, but it was basically comparative data, one versus the other, not just standalone. However, in every which way you slice and dice it, SEO agency as a term is, say, up and trending upwards. What about for paid media and PPC with all of this that we've talked about? Is this a continuation of its slide, PPC and its paid media and its value, or is it just relative to the SEO landscape at the moment having its sort of, let's call it, boom or growth?
I think the cynic in me is looking at it and thinking everybody's wanting to now jump on the bandwagon, and SEO specialist agencies are best place to deliver on that. But what's happening is people have over-relied on paid media performance marketing from a paid viewpoint of seeing costs increasing over the last 2 years, and it's only going to get more and more expensive. But what's happening is Google, in isolation, organic traffic is down significantly. Visibility is obviously down. Search volumes are dropping because of the shift in user behaviour. Which is fine. So there's two things there. SEO has been wildly underpriced for a long, long time. And paid media costs have gone up. Because Google knows that more people are using it to bridge the gap between organic dropping and paid, but they're also capitalizing on it while they can, while they figure out how to monetize AI mode and Gemini. But I don't see a world where paid is ever going to disappear.
No.
So it's just balance.
If you look at SERP real estate and layout as it looks today, and I'm sure, as we know, the UI, etc., will be constantly tweaked, won't it? That's what Google does. just visually looking at the SERP now, paid media is almost lost. PPC is almost lost on that. It's certainly above the fold. Do you then start to think, okay, how are the ChatGPTs, etc., going to effectively look like a SERP eventually and move towards that organic and paid split of sort of listings and surfacing of information? Do you imagine that's coming?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Do you think with that, well, ultimately, what effect do you think this is going to have on Google from a revenue perspective? Because obviously we always talk about revenue driver and all the levers that Google and channels that Google have from a revenue generation perspective. Obviously, advertising is there. Do you see that being significantly knocked? But then this is Google we're talking about, so where else are they going to pick up revenue from that might plug any deficits?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a theft of share happening at the moment, but it's a shift in user behaviour, and I think people underestimate Google in that context. Like ChatGPT's come into the world, hasn't it, and exploded over the last 2 years, and it's stealing share. ChatGPT is now using Google results. There's something going to happen with that licensing, or there'll be something off the back of that, I would have thought. Equally, ChatGPT conversations are now surfacing in Google.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could argue that Google are going to be like, well, we're doing this,
Exactly.
you're doing that.
Yeah.
But when I say underestimated, when I'm talking about people's perception, Google have got more data than anyone else. They're doing 5 trillion searches a year. In terms of user data, it didn't really get much bigger.
No.
And then what they've now got in front of them is all that data plus an industry-leading model in Gemini. So when they're layering in AI mode, and they've been testing AI overviews for a long time, so they know the effect, the impact that it's having. In my opinion now, Google have got the opportunity to put AI mode in front of people. It serve as a better user experience because it answers questions in a better way, but it also answers follow-up questions. It's more useful. Plus, then you start layering in things like agentic capability. So if you're in travel, for example, you're not only going to get the answer, you're probably going to be able to perform actions at the end of that in the form of bookings.
Yeah.
It's going to make your life 10 times easier. So there's that. But Google have been striving to deliver the best user experience for decades, but also they've been striving for, or competing, or trying to figure out a way to keep people in platform. So when, I don't know, 2009, was it, Facebook, when it popped off?
Yeah.
Ever since then, I think Google have like looked at that and thought, these guys have come in, they probably nicked a bit of share in terms of attention, not necessarily search, but attention. And Facebook have obviously built this massive user base where the ad revenue is a primary revenue model. Google have attempted over the last 15 years or so to replicate that, a Google Plus, for example, where they're looking at capturing discovery and capturing users dwelling on their systems without leaving. They failed at that, shut that down, but that was, again, data. And now we're in a position, I think, where they're going to be able to deliver a user experience that is market leading based on the data that they've got, where you don't leave platform. the revenue potential in that is going to be enormous.
Yeah.
And I think people have underestimated Google's plan in the background.
Mm.
And now, where we're at now, I think people are looking at it and thinking, right, okay.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
What's your, I really liked your LinkedIn post from this week. And for people who haven't seen it yet, you obviously explore AI mode and not just your take on it, but your understanding of it and a couple of bits and pieces in terms of advice. But going back to the start of that, what's, for anyone who's listening who AI mode is brand new as it is in the UK.
Yeah.
What's your understanding of it, and how are you thinking about it that others can think about it as a new, I'm going to call it concept, but what is it in your opinion?
As a strategist,
Yeah.
well, it's just a better user experience. It basically draws on Gemini's capability, how you interact with it, conversational search, answers, follow-on questions, but it's all in the SERP, in a familiar format.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically taking the best of search, taking the best of Gemini, marrying them together and providing a better user experience, which has been Google's MO for the last 20 years.
Yeah. So from a marketer, from an execution perspective, where do people need to be thinking, in your opinion? And I have a feeling it's going to be a repetition of what you said at the start, which is the fundamentals of search that shouldn't have been ignored for a long, long time. But following on from that very specifically, AI mode, how it works, how should marketers be thinking in terms of execution and approach? What should they be doing?
I mean, like I said at the start, SEO has been undervalued for a long time, and good SEO would mean if you've been doing it for a while, you're gonna see the benefit, or you're gonna be in front of brands and businesses that haven't paid that much attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just comes down to good practice. I think there's nothing revolutionary that people need to do. There's different elements that you need to understand, and you need to, at a technical level, understand the difference in how results are served and how information is retrieved. There are nuances and there are differences which impact content strategy, for example. But it's just a shift in technology and user behaviour.
At its core, are you ultimately saying here we're still in the same place as we always have been in terms of fundamentals?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because probably I'd say realistically about 3 years ago, TikTok made a big difference in how users were discovering and consuming content.
It's a really interesting dwell time.
Yeah.
Disruptor.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things, like if you go macro, TikTok made a big difference, like I say, primarily content platform, but with like a searchable content platform, which was slightly more search led than an Instagram, for example. Instagram was more discovery based on like other people hoping that you would find the content, whereas TikTok did a better job of helping you get there and making it searchable, if that makes sense. And then that user behavior shift was when we started looking at multi-platform optimization instead of just Google in isolation. And I think Google search has become a last click channel platform. AI mode is a discovery.
Yeah.
So then diversifying based on user behavior is how we've approached it. So multi-platform, same sort of approach in terms of looking at strategy from a user's perspective. Are we looking at the best content based on the user journey? Are we looking at the opportunity based on the user journey?
Yeah.
Are we looking at conversion based on the user journey?
Mm-hmm.
Same principles.
Yeah. Interestingly, honing in on a very specific thing there, but obviously deciphering between the two. You mentioned there that there's maybe slight nuance or shifts in focus areas, let's say now. So you mentioned like content strategy. So let's say the fundamentals of the fundamental disciplines of let's call it an old school SEO strategy or program would be, amongst other things, from a super high level technical SEO content, on-site, off-site, digital PR. That makeup of those three disciplines, we're saying that they're still in play, but with search as we see it today, and we're treating it today, and have been for a few years, but just focusing on today, is the makeup of how you should focus your time and your efforts across, just say, those three disciplines. Has that altered? Would you say that, for example, I'm saying this in inverted commas for anyone listening, like content is now more important than it was before, or content is more important than tech SEO, or content can actually impact results more than it used to, for example? So you need to almost shift your the makeup of your focus around those three disciplines. Have you seen anything come more into light? Because digital PR, for example, I've also read you were saying you almost feel like this is the second wave for SEO. I've read a hell of a lot of people saying that very specifically for digital PR. So across those three disciplines, are you seeing one or two or three or none put more on a pedestal in terms of its importance and impact in driving performance in what is search today?
I think it comes down to two things: relevance and attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got to pay attention to both of those. The playing field has broadened,
Mm-hmm.
but if you keep relevance and you keep attention front of mind when you're approaching both, then you'll yield brand growth. And ultimately what you're looking for is recall at every stage.
Yeah. If I was listening to those two facets that you gave there, attention, relevance, do you imagine there's a tendency to, if you were just mapping those and ultimately this isn't how it works, but if someone was listening to that and mapping those to as I said, I call it the old school, but it's very much current, the technical SEO, content, digital PR, three-pronged approach, is it fair to say that with those two in mind, attention and relevance, that content and digital PR seem to be the most impactful vehicles for achieving those? So where does tech fit in your mind? Or is it just always there?
Well, tech's always there. It always has been, always will be. Everybody lives on the mobile phone. Tech inherently means that you have foundationally the capability of receiving users based on a need and then smoothly transitioning those people into customers.
Yeah.
Tech is the backbone of that.
Yeah.
From an attention and a relevance standpoint, like, if people don't know that you exist, you're not going to succeed.
Mm.
So how do you get people to know that you exist? Press. Discoverability.
Mm.
So there's digital PR, which is a trust signal and a brand signal. There's also then discovery content, the two of which go hand in hand.
Yeah.
then once people have an imprint of the brand, there's a recall opportunity. That need is then, or should be, fulfilled by content, which delivers value to that user at the point in which they need it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a conversion opportunity when the user has mental availability and they're looking for a need that is further down the funnel.
Mm.
So relevance is mid content based, probably. Attention would be digital PR, but also discovery content. And then your technical would sit when you've nurtured that person to the point where your product service expertise fills a need when they've got mental availability, when they've done the 3 million touch points to get to that.
Yeah. Interesting about those touch points, 3 million touch points, probably not even an exaggeration. When we're diving into this and speaking to prospects and clients about all of this, and we've built and continued to iterate on a proposition here that is well and truly user-centered in terms of all those touch points and effective coverage and effectiveness holistically from a marketing perspective of all disciplines that are in play. And that's constantly what we're talking about brands to and our audiences with as well. Would you say then, so tech, content, digital PR, all in play as they always have been, maybe with slightly different sort of focuses as such? Is SEO, is it still SEO? Is SEO still something that we need to be referring to? Because I know we've talked about it before, that I'm trying not to even think about it as SEO. What are we looking at here? Are we talking brand and only brand? How do you see what would have been SEO traditionally? What's the label that we're giving it now, or how are you thinking about it? Because things that you've mentioned there that just haven't been mentioned enough in the past are things like winning audience attention, what influence you have as a brand across all those touch points before people have even hit your site, then obviously what your site needs to do. These all feel sort of maybe new or newly labelled things and things to achieve, so like attention, influence, all that sort of stuff, relevance. Has that always been fundamental with SEO, but we just weren't necessarily labelling things like that? Or are we taking a complete step away or up from what was SEO, and now we're just talking about like brand ultimately?
Brand's always been a huge part of successful SEO. I mean, there's GEO, AIO, many acronyms. The fundamentals are SEO as a practice, a mature practice with an outcome of generating more sales or leads or more customers. That won't change.
No.
Call it what you want. Good SEO has always had brand consideration.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't rush to or knee-jerk into, we're not an SEO agency anymore, we're a GEO agency.
Yeah.
Discuss it, talk about it. Don't knee-jerk. Have faith in your expertise and have faith in the skills that you've got and how you've developed over the last however long you've been operating. Don't knee-jerk into just putting everything in the bin and rebrand into whatever the latest acronym is.
Final thought and question, really. All of this that we talked about, do you think it's equally as applicable for B2B as it is B2C?
Yeah.
So do you think B2B brands need to be absolutely thinking and operating and talking, when I say talking, I mean internally, internal teams, marketing, etc. Do they need to be replicating how B2C teams are? Obviously with, say, channel selections being mapped to where their audience is going to be and where they want to influence those audiences. But ultimately, is that line that we've talked about before between B2B and B2C in today's world even blurrier?
Yeah, I mean, the principles are the same.
I'm just thinking, as you're talking through discoverability, you're talking through winning influence, winning audience attention, audience influence pre-site visit, for example. They all sound like you can absolutely throw them over into B2B world, and should be.
Well, the difference is the customer. So that customer is still there in the same way, whether you're talking about B2B or B2C. It's just the customer is probably slightly different, and the need that you're trying to fulfill for that customer is different.
Yeah.
The way that they get there is probably similar. But I mean, people that have been paying attention with like the cookie dance that Google have been doing, when that started happening and the laws started getting floated around, those changes, and iOS happened,
Yeah.
and that prompted me to think, right, we're going to have to figure out how to start working in cohorts. We're not going to have the granularity to continue optimizing in the same way and continue building strategy in the same way. And I think that's even more relevant now. You've got to understand your user and build them into cohorts, because that targeting capability is probably going to be in a no-click world. Is going to be how you capable of targeting people.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
I've got this or that.
All right, go.
Relevance or reach?
I would say relevance, because I think the capability that you have now to reach people is not dependent on authority in the same way that it used to be. So you could put a piece of content out with no followers on a social network, and if it lands right, it will shoot off and you will develop relevance.
What about relevance and then scale?
Yeah. Well, yeah, relevance is a moving, it's a living thing, isn't it? You've got to be relevant. And I think one thing that's come out very recently in the last couple of weeks is that AI engines are using more relevant results, like last 30 days, in their results.
Yeah.
So relevance, when it used to be applicable more, what are we talking, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, relevance for like hot topic. Not relevance, freshness. We're at like hot topic. I think that's becoming lively again, like frequency. You've got to be putting consistent, relevant, depth, valuable content out, and I think that was a thing about 7 years ago, something like that.
Brand trust or brand visibility?
Trust.
Schema or backlinks?
Do you know what? I'd probably push down schema
Now.
a little bit more in the world that we're moving towards. Backlinks still important, still trust signals, broader trust signals as well, because if you look at the makeup of a backlink, that's someone else looking at you and linking to you as a trust signal. However, citations, brand mentions are as relevant now, but I think we're moving towards schema being more important, because structured data is how LLMs are best informed.
Nice. Not a this or that, but final question. You mentioned, what's the word? Versatility and diversity in your content formats, for example. So my question is, what is, in your opinion, the most underrated content format in search right now?
Underrated.
So we've acknowledged that multiple, basically a diverse content plan in terms of content formats is necessary. We talked about on-site, off-site. So what's the most underrated format, in your opinion, in search right now?
It's hard to pin a format down. In terms of value, I think podcasts are valuable in a different way to a lot of the other formats, because saturation in short form content means that people's attention for short form is less.
Yeah.
You've got less opportunity to make an impact, whereas people that are seeking deeper, meaningful content, such as a podcast that's like a half an hour to, I don't know, 3 hour listen,
Yeah.
has the capability of embedding information with people, whereas I think the comparable, like short form video or a post or a piece of content, it's repetition and consistency is going to probably be a big influence on success in that space, whereas depth has more opportunity for action, I think. But it's hard to translate podcasts for like broad stroke brands. Like, it's difficult if you think of a manufacturing business that does concrete. The depth and value that you're able to deliver in a podcast needs a lot more thought for it to have the cut through. But I think if you get the discoverability and it's valuable to the right cohort, think about that opportunity versus where all the other people play.
Yeah.
There's probably an exponential gain to be had from providing the depth, but it's hard to facilitate. It's a thinker.
Depth of content is definitely something I've taken from this conversation. So my underrated content format was going to be long form pieces, but I'm thinking B2B here. But who doesn't? Who's to say that B2C this isn't applicable for? But things like informational guides, that kind of thing. Depth.
Depth.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.